Hello and welcome to another video. So today's video, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 most ridiculous romance books I've encountered in my adult life. So this idea came to me because I was talking to some coworkers, and one of the authors that I'm going to mention later on either hasn't released a book in a while or we haven't proofed one of her books in a while, and so we were just kind of like, I wonder whatever happened to her. And so then I was just thinking, wow, she writes ridiculous books. And then it just got the ball rolling into what other ridiculous romances I've read, because there are some good ones. So I'm gonna go backwards, 5 to 1, with number 1 being the absolute most ridiculous romance book I've ever encountered. I do want to have a disclaimer that there are 2 books in this list that I have not read. However, the people that I work with have read these books and they have given me a very detailed descriptions of them, so it's as if I have read them. So let's get started. So book number 5 is actually more of a author than a book. I have read one of her books, and this is the author that I was kind of talking about earlier, and that is Lonnie Lynn Vale. Anything written by Lonnie Lynn Vale is guaranteed to be ridiculous. And by ridiculous, I mean like the plot is a little bit convoluted, the characters aren't very realistic, and the romance is just kind of all over the place, where you kind of laugh at it and you kind of just see it as more of entertainment than as a romance book. So I went through her Goodreads and I just kind of wanted to find an average rating of her books, and every single one of her books on Goodreads has over 4 stars, which I think is so funny. And then when you actually go in and read some of the reviews, a lot of them are just saying like, oh yeah, it's pretty entertaining, or some of them are really out there. There was more than one review saying that they wished that her book covers were scratch and sniff. That's actually crazy. Like, that's crazy that people say this stuff, and she's the only author I have ever seen anybody make a comment like that in one of her reviews. So all the way back in 2019, I read one of her books. It was called Another One Bites the Dust, and it was in a biker gang series. Not really like a typical motorcycle club, but he was just like a biker. Like, I don't think there was any kind of group there. He was just a biker. I don't remember too much about this, but I did end up giving it 4 stars, and this is word for word the review I said. Stupid but entertaining. Some impossible things happened. So I don't exactly remember exact details, but just based off of that, I find it funny. From what I remember, the characters were just unrealistic and they were just not behaving in the way that people usually behave. However, I don't think it's the most ridiculous thing, so that's why it's number 5 on the list. Moving on to number 4 on the list, Baby Maker by Mia Ford. This one I ended up giving 2 stars. So let me just give you the premise of this book. This book is about this guy who puts out these classified ads. I don't know how to delicately put this, but the point of the ad is that he will sleep with women until he impregnates them. Like, that's the point of his ad. And then once they get pregnant, they pay him. Like, I don't know who came up with that concept itself, but it's just so like ridiculous. And then you're like, oh, this is the beginning of a romance. Like, what actually happens? He like has a meeting to kind of talk to a new potential client and finds out that this is like a girlfriend from his past, like a couple years ago. I don't want to give more details about like what actually happens in the books, because I don't want to like give any spoilers in case people are, like, want to read it for their own entertainment. But it's a doozy, this one. Just the whole concept, it's something else. Okay, book number 3, The Glue by Kay Webster. Like, when I just think about these books, I'm just like, I really had to read these books. Like, I actually had to read them. This book is about this guy who is going to college, and he also works in a bakery. And so he starts sleeping with his college professor, who is a man. And then he also starts sleeping with his boss at the bakery, who is a woman. And then he finds out that his boss from the bakery and his college professor are married to each other. So essentially, the married couple is cheating on each other with the same guy. And while that part is kind of like, okay, you know, it's a romance, like, okay, I can accept that. Where it goes from there, that's where it gets ridiculous. The couple find out, I don't exactly remember what, like, if they get mad at each other or not, because I read this a couple years ago. But basically what happens is they've realized that their marriage doesn't work anymore. And so they need this college student to be the glue in their marriage. Hence the title. Moving on to book number 2, Dolphin's Playground by Jackie Burton. This one I did not read, but one of my colleagues has read it, and he was giving us quotes. He was telling us about it. He was sending us little audio clips. This book is not very long, and this is number 2 on the list for a reason. This is a shifter book. It is a dolphin shifter book, and there is dolphin shifter sex. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is not something that I thought I would ever read. Honestly, like, shifter books out there, I've read a number of shifter books and I've seen all kinds of different animals, but dolphins, like, that's a little bit outside of the realm of normalcy. Oh, I forgot to say, but for The Glue, I ended up giving that one 2 stars. So back to this one. Average Goodreads reviews for Dolphin's Playground is 3.6 stars, but there's not that many reviews. Like, not many people have actually read this book. So this book is about a biologist, and there's a bunch of dolphins that beach themselves, and so she's trying to save them. And then there's this guy who is a dolphin shifter, and the dolphins are part of his group, pack, I don't know. They're like his friends and family, whatever. So he comes on shore with this huge prejudice against humans, but he has to work together with a biologist to save his dolphin brethren, and it becomes romance, because of course it does. So this is like a little quote that's in the Goodreads description. It says, "The moment Jazz meets Triton, he lights a fire within her that no ocean can douse." Oh boy. So I have the audiobook for this, and I thought about just listening to it real quick before I did this video, but like I just don't want to. Like, I'm good not ever reading this book. Number 1, the absolute most ridiculous book that I've ever encountered. This is another one that I have not read, but one of my colleagues actually narrated it so that the rest of us can read it, and we didn't have to spend money buying it. This book is Kissing the Coronavirus by M.J. Edwards. Kissing the Coronavirus. This book was published at the end of April in 2020, about 1.5 months after America was shut down due to COVID. This book was released. And I use the term book lightly because it's a novelette. It's like 16 or 19 pages, I can't exactly remember. On Amazon, in like a little blurb, it says that the author wrote this book because she needed money because she lost her job due to COVID. And I just like, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. There's also more than one. There's at least 3 books in the series, books. I think that's wild. I think that's absolutely wild. Man, this was a fun video to film. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these ridiculous books, or what the most ridiculous romance book you've ever read. I think that's gonna just be a good time. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!